Once among the most stylish and popular sports coupes in Europe, the Vauxhall Calibra was the product of General Motors' lengthy attempt to develop a model that would compete with the likes of Ford and BMW by way of marrying performance with dashing good looks, thus creating a machine with an American-esque external appearance, but with power and speed that could easily lock horns with the best of its rivals. Vauxhall's endeavours to create a dedicated coupe model began in 1971 with the launch of the Firenze HC, a two-door version of the company's mass-production Viva saloon that was developed to do battle with the legendary Ford Capri. Although despite hosting superb sports car performance for the price of a low-end family car, the Firenze HC turned into a sales calamity caused by both corporate mismanagement, a lackluster commitment to the overall design, and a botched attempt to sell the car on the Canadian market, where it was sold as the General Motors Firenze through Pontiac dealerships, which ultimately led to the loss of Vauxhall's single largest export market by the end of 1972. Meanwhile, improvements to the breed with the troop-stood Firenze HP of October 1973, which was a markedly more dedicated concept than the previous HC, were released at precisely the wrong time due to the outbreak of the Yom Kippur War and the instigation of oil embargoes by OPEC, which led to a crippling recession and the collapse of global car sales. The launch of the Firenze HP coinciding with the announcement of the new Vauxhall Magnum range, which initially included a coupe variation using the Firenze body, but would again fail to see sales success despite being a competently made package. Ultimately, the first Vauxhall coupe model to sell in any substantial numbers was a coupe variant of the Mark I Cavalier of October 1975, which was later joined by the sports hatch version that eventually supplanted the coupe, the Cavalier being part of the General Motors Europe U-Car program, with variants sold under GM's European division being marketed as the Opel Ascona and Manta B, with long-term plans being to replace the U-Car platform with the front-wheel drive General Motors J82 layout for the Cavalier Mark II. This would be the product of Vauxhall's design department headed by Wayne Cherry, who had pushed hard for both a hatch coupe and an estate model to be included in the program, although Opel, who were the lead division for the J-car in Europe, saw no need for either, leading to the Cavalier J82 estate only being offered in the UK, while General Motors' Australian division, Holden, sold their own Chimera estate, with parts from that model imported from Australia to build the Cavalier estate, with the extremely popular Opel Manta being scheduled to end production at the same time as all the other U-car variations. However, Opel's decision to opt out of coupe production was a poor one, as well as had been predicated on the notion that the Ford Capri was to be removed from the market. Ford instead gave this model an extensive and very effective facelift, with a planned 4-year extension to the product cycle, leading to Opel's head of design, Gordon Brown, being tasked with developing as fast as possible a cosmetic Manta facelift, which needed to look dramatic, cost very little extra to manufacture, and could be put into production within a minimal time frame. The resultant car was presented with several major mechanical enhancements, including a new 1.8S overhead cam engine with a 5-speed manual gearbox, although Brown would not live to see his project through to fruition, as in 1983 he fell to his death when climbing the Lorelei Rock on the Rhine Valley in West Germany, leading to the elevation of Wayne Cherry to Brown's former post at Opel's headquarters in Rüsselsheim, with Cherry incorporating a new and substantial change to both Vauxhall and Opel's styling philosophy, which incorporated a theme heavily inspired by Cherry's own American roots. Come the middle of the 1980s, it was apparent that the era of the legendary sports coupe models such as the Capri and the Manta was fading rapidly, primarily due to the fact that the big names at General Motors and Ford needed to focus more of their efforts into reviving their mass-production car ranges following over a decade of stagnation during the malaise era of the 1970s, in combination with a sea of new Pacific metal arriving on the shores of Europe and America from Japan. Both GM and Ford, together with other European car builders whose market shares were being threatened, bringing down the axe on many of their traditional sports coupes. By 1989, the likes of the Ford Capri, the Opel Manta, the Renault Fuego, and the Alfa Romeo Sprint and GTV had all been discontinued, while the J82 platform Vauxhall Cavalier Mark II and Opel Ascona models were also facing their own replacement, as based on the new GN 2900 platform, with the latest variations of these cars being codenamed the J89, creating the Vauxhall Cavalier Mark III and Opel Vectra A. Wayne Cherry, now head of Opel's design studios, implementing a corporate reorganization that placed as great an emphasis and as many resources as possible into interior design, previously a well-known Opel weakness. In March 1987, Jack Smith, head of GM Europe, was preparing for a routine visit from GM President Jim McDonnell when he decided that, in order to garner support for the design departments at Rüsselsheim, Chery would draft plans for a dramatically styled new coupe with the aim of getting approval for the project. Chery appointing Studio 3 under Erhard Schnell, who had previously worked on the original Opel GT in the 1960s, to bring this new coupe project to fruition, with Schnell being able to design in under a week a new coupe model based on a shortened version of the GM 2900 platform that sported a wheelbase that was 3.1 inches less than the J89 Cavalier. This would accommodate a 2+2 seating configuration, but in order to cut development costs for a bespoke platform, the new car would instead simply use the standard GM 2900 platform as per the Mark III Cavalier, thus giving the new coupe the ability to comfortably seat 4 passengers in a manner that was largely unique for cars of this market segment, and in July 1987 the program was given official approval with the internal project number of 2670. With Schnell continuing to provide input, he insisted that frameless door windows be used, which would make the profile more aesthetically pleasing, while also giving rise to the potential for a drop-top version in the future that didn't require complex engineering compromises so as to compensate for the lack of a dedicated B-pillar, while his design input also brought about the incorporation of extremely slim headlights, fog lights and turn indicators that were specially developed in conjunction with Heller, giving the coupe an incredibly sleek and streamlined appearance, with the first styling mock-up integrating twin front air vents, which were meant to acknowledge the link with the previous Opel Manta, but these were dropped in favor of a single item as it looked better, while at the rear, the slanted rear tail lights blended with the integrated rear spoiler design. As Schnell busied himself with the styling, Chery, who was renowned at Vauxhall for his ability to combine looks with exceptional aerodynamics, was able to work in conjunction with engineer Hans-Joachim Emmelmann to develop the streamlining of the car and reduce the drag coefficient. The upcoming coupe model going against the usual convention of concept cars, wherein the drag coefficient would inevitably increase between the prototype and the production model, as compromises were made to accommodate road safety features and other required aspects to make it more road legal. But with the new coupe, this instead saw a reduction in its drag coefficient from the original mock-up's figure of 0.33 to 0.26 for the basic version of the production model. The biggest aerodynamic benefits were made not at the front as per standard logic, but instead at the rear, with the tapering of the tail giving 50% of the improvements gained, while the front design and bumpers only accounted for 15% of this figure. Emmelmann, following wind tunnel tests at Stuttgart, seeing an opportunity to implement further improvements by applying systematic attention to specific areas, working from the front to the back and dowering the car with panel lines that didn't disturb airflow, while at the same time complementing the styling outputs of the design department. Careful attention being paid to the transition points between headlights and body, the grille and bonnet, and by tuning the depth and width of the chin spoiler, the integration of which in front of the tyres producing a drag coefficient saving of 0.01 on its own. Furthermore, rounded pillars, the tapered roofline, wheel arch housings and the rear window were all blended together to avoid vortexes that would reduce the aerodynamic efficiency of the model, with original intentions being for the car to be 2 inches wider at the rear wheel arches and at both the top and base of the rear window, with further changes made by moving the body waistline and rear side glass inboard from the body extremes as they moved towards the rear of the car, while the rear tailgate glass at the optimum 20-degree angle meant the coupe assumed a droplet shape in plan view and a true wedge in profile, with the tail also being designed to impart low lift on the rear axle for greater high-speed stability, with Vauxhall claiming that it had the same lift coefficient as cars that utilized a separate rear spoiler. Attention was also paid to the exterior door mirrors, as these were designed to blend with the front screen pillars and wings so as to deflect water away from the side windows, with a thin rubber lip running the length of the A-pillar being fitted to direct water over the roof rather than to the sides, with the sealing of the frameless side windows against water leaks and wind noise being accomplished through the use of a larger quarter-vent window and heavy rubber seals that allowed a 10mm pre-tension on the glass producing, at high speeds, a low-pressure area that sucked out the paint by between 2 and 3mm, with this pre-tensioning allowing this to occur without any increase in wind noise, Vauxhall again claiming that this system was so effective that wind noise was lower in the Calibra than the J89 Cavalier with ordinary window frames. With the project, now dubbed the Vauxhall Calibra, being given the go-ahead in July 1987, the launch date of the car was expected, at the earliest, to be either late 1989 or early 1990. Thus meaning it was essential to retain as much of the running gear as possible from the J89 Cavalier, with cost and viability studies highlighting early on that the Calibra would never sell in the same numbers as the Cavalier, thus meaning the only way to keep the car breaking even was to share as many components as possible with the family saloon, the most significant change in the car's design being alterations to the underbody design that forced a requirement for revised manufacturing transfer lines, this being the single most expensive item in the car's construction, and was the deciding factor as to why the J89 wheelbase was adopted instead of the original shorter wheelbase proposed by the design department. The engineering team behind the J89 Cavalier worked to reduce unnecessary expenditure wherever possible, so as to come as far under budget with that model as was necessary to make the Calibra project feasible in the eyes of the Vauxhall Opel management, presenting incredibly low production costs due to parts and platform sharing, while at the same time, through its promotion as the world's most aerodynamic car, proposing incredibly high returns by giving drivers a sleek and sublime sports coupe that was tailored to be the most fuel-efficient product for its market segment. Aside from its body, Vauxhall's engineers did little else to the general mechanics of the Calibra when bringing it over from the Cavalier MkIII, retaining the same basic McPherson strut front suspension, although four-wheel drive models used firmer suspension bushes and a slightly smaller 22mm instead of 24mm anti-roll bar, while the trailing arm independent rear suspension of the Cavalier four-wheel drive, which was a modified version of that unit found on the Carlton MkIII, was used unchanged on this variant of the Calibra, with 16-valve Calibra models using gas-filled struts fitted all around, while power steering and 4-channel anti-lock brakes were standard on all models. The overall dimensions of the Calibra placing it 2.4 inches longer than the Cavalier thanks to its streamlined profile. However, despite being based on a platform usually built to accommodate a 4-seat family saloon, the car was in fact shorter than its closest rival, the Ford Probe, which was 0.4 inches longer. Vauxhall only offering the Calibra in full catalytic form, meaning the base 2-litre 8-valve engine produced 115 horsepower when compared to the 130 horsepower found on the non-cat versions of the Opel equivalent. Although despite this, the car was still able to attain a top speed of 127 miles an hour and a 0-60 time of 10 seconds, while the uprated 16-valve with 150 horsepower could reach 139 miles an hour and perform a 0-60 time of 8.5 seconds. Formally announced in August 1989, followed by its first public showing at the Frankfurt Motor Show a month later, the Calibra was lauded by the motoring press and public, with what was meant to be a barnstorming debut for the far more powerful and upmarket BMW 850i being reduced to something of a mundanity by the presence of the brand new Vauxhall, the car entering sales from May 1990, and was offered as the Vauxhall Calibra in the UK, the Opel Calibra in Europe, and the Holden Calibra on the Australian and New Zealand markets. From October 1992, the car was sold in Latin America as the Chevrolet Calibra, with both the export models to Latin America and the Australian markets being axed in August 1996, with production of the car being centered at the Rüsselsheim factory in Germany, before being supplemented in 1991 by the Valmet automotive plant in Finland, with only Vauxhall and Opel badged cars being produced at the Finnish factory, Calibra assembly from 1995 eventually being entirely placed at the Valmet plant. In terms of sales, Vauxhall continued to play up the fact that the Calibra was the world's most aerodynamic production car as part of its marketing, a title this machine would hold until the 1999 launch of the Audi A2 and the Honda Insight, with drag coefficients of 0.25, reviewers praising the exterior design, but found that the road dynamics in the interior were generally lackluster due to their similarities to the comparatively humdrum Cavalier MkIII. This problem compounded somewhat by the fact that the car came with only one interior trim option regardless of engine choice. Nevertheless, despite these unfortunate niggles, GM's original sales forecast of 30,000 cars per year was exceeded substantially during 1990 and 1991 alone, the results of which outstripped both the engine production facilities at Vauxhall's Ellesmere Port factory on Merseyside, which needed a full plant expansion so as to bring engine assembly up to 50,000 units per annum, and the rival Ford Probe, which itself was based on Mazda underpinnings, while the closest competitor to the Calibra in terms of commercial performance was the exceptionally popular Rover 200 Coupe on the UK market, while in Germany, Italy, Spain and France, no other car on sale at the time could match the Opel as examples swept off forecourts in their thousands. Alongside the regular Calibra, a number of limited edition versions of the car were also created during its production life, the first example being the Vauxhall Tickford Calibra, which was developed in collaboration with Newport Pagnell-based automobile engineering and testing business Tickford, who specialized in producing luxury and performance versions of cars from a variety of different manufacturers. The concept behind the Tickford Calibra being to add an element of bespoke luxury to the car, although in reality, as the model already sported such facets as an electric sunroof and electric windows, Tickford's work extended merely to fitting Alcantara and Mandarin seats and interior trim, although some were later trimmed in grey leather with red piping seats. This came alongside a top-class leather steering wheel by Ital Volante, with matching leather gear stick gaiter, front footwell lights, door tread plates with Tickford engraved on them, and leather lining for the passenger side cubbyhole. This car being launched in October 1991 at the London Motor Show at Earl's Court, with 19 dealers placing orders, although due to the lack of general significant changes between the Tickford Calibra and the regular model, this variant proved not to be very popular, and thus only 26 examples were ever built. Other editions, specifically the Calibra SE or Special Edition, which was released in 9 generations between October 1992 and June 1997, were again merely based on cosmetic changes, including a leather-trimmed steering wheel, heated front seats, 15-inch 6-spoke alloy wheels, Reworked 2-coat pearlescent paint cream leather interior, optional 4-speed automatic transmission, 5-spoke alloy wheels, and 205/55R ultra-low-profile tires, a Grundig 4870 stereo radio cassette player with 10-disc CD auto-changer, air conditioning, and a body-color rear spoiler. Further special edition variants was the Calibra DTM or Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft, which was developed to celebrate Opel's participation in the German DTM touring car racing competition in May 1995. These cars, including a 2.5-litre 24-valve injection V6, Checkers cloth seat trim, anthracite leather trim with heated seats, optional leather-covered steering wheel with grey grip inserts, lowered sports suspension with gas pressure dampers, white 7JX16 BBS alloy wheels, 205/50R ultra-low-profile tyres, body color rear spoiler with built-in brake light, body color roof rails and door handles, DTM Motorsport badging, optional air conditioning, and an SC804 CDC stereo radio cassette CD player with boot-mounted auto-changer. This was followed in August 1996 by the Vauxhall Calibra Turbo Limited Edition, which fitted the car with a 2-litre 16-valve injection turbo V6, black 2-coat solid paint, body color rear spoiler with built-in brake light, lowered sport suspension with gas pressure dampers, 7JX16 BBS alloy wheels, 205/50R ultra-low-profile tyres, leather trim, heated seats, and air conditioning, with each car being individually numbered with a plaque on the ashtray. In terms of further variants, during 1990, following General Motors' acquisition of a controlling share in the Swedish carmaker Saab, proposals were made to enhance the Saab range by way of badging the Calibra as the Saab and putting it on sale in the United States, although this plan was eventually scuppered due to the costs of modifying the model's engineering so as to meet stringent US emissions and crash regulations. Meanwhile, as per the earliest concepts for the Calibra, a convertible version was first put forward in 1992, with this design reaching the prototype stage with 2 running examples output from the Valmet factory in Finland, with an additional body shell for flexibility stress testing also being produced, although once again this proposal was dropped as the forecast selling price was considered to be too high for the project to be a viable commercial proposition. The Calibra was also not immune to faults, as the transfer gearbox in the 4x4 models, as adopted from the Cavalier MkIII, was notorious for its poor engineering and suffered damage from conditions such as minor differences in tyre wear or tyre pressure between the front and rear axles, requiring that all 4 tyres had to be of the same make and model and had to be swapped between the front and rear wheels once every 1,500 miles so as to allow for even wear, leading to the sometimes illogical situation of, in the event of a puncture in one of the tyres, that the 3 remaining good tyres also had to be changed, a situation either largely unknown or ignored by drivers who are unaware that, in their attempt to save money in the short term, failure of the transfer gearbox due to the stresses of improper tyre coordination would lead to a highly expensive replacement bill. In the end, the Calibra remained in production until August 1997, though due to the backlog of orders as its popularity continued to endure, last-of-the-line Calibras could still be found in showrooms until as late as the summer of 1998, with total production for the car in all of its guises reaching 239,118 examples, while the rival Ford Probe only ever achieved 119,754 units by the time it was replaced in 1997 by the Ford Cougar. The Calibra, to this day, maintains Vauxhall's slogan of a coupe without compromise, as it maintains a strong following among enthusiasts as one of the crowning achievements for General Motors' European division. Its mixture of simple saloon car engineering, perfectly encapsulated within a body cleverly designed to take aerodynamics to the cutting edge, while at the same time maintaining a style and profile that still looks good even 35 years after it first left the production line.